As most of you be aware by now, the Division beta has been running for the last few days and is now finished. I just thought I'd pop down a few of my opinions on how the Division played for me over the beta weekend. So here it goes. First off, I'd like to look at what the Division was trying to do. The Division is trying to be a cover-based, squad-based RPG shooter with a persistent world. So using that, I'd like to break it down into the 4 different parts. The Division as a cover-based shooter. The Division uses the cover mechanic really well. I did want to just jump from cover to cover all the way across the map. It was really that easy. The only issue with this was that I was really sprinting across the map most of the time, as there was no need to use the cover as the enemies were pretty thin, especially towards the end of the beta when you'd cleared out most of the enemies. The mechanic of the cover was fairly easy to pick up, however did really feel like you could do a lot with it once you mastered it, and did feel like it was going to be fairly hard to master it. So the skill ceiling there looks like will keep people in the game for a very long time, and we could see some really expert players mastering that cover mechanic. The strange part I found with the cover mechanic, however, was the fact that when I was in cover and the other person was in cover, I felt unbeatable. There was pretty much nothing they could do. They could try and flush me out with grenades and things like that, but once you're in cover, you're pretty hard to beat. However, the strange part of it was, for a cover-based game, the enemies that troubled me the most were the ones that weren't using cover and were rushing me. Other than the times I got stuck being lazy and not using cover, there was these rushing guys with baseball bats and golf clubs that really did seem to trouble me. That could have been my skill level too, though. Overall, I really did love it. I just really did want to use it a lot more, and I do feel it's part of the beta that there was a lot of enemies missing from that map, and I hope that they do refresh the enemies and it's not just once you clear them out they're gone. I hope they do push back into the spots. You could see elements of the map design that clearly was supposed to be for either boss battles or definitely for other enemies that just weren't there. So I've got a feeling we only saw about 25% of the map populated, and it will feel a bit more dangerous when we get to the full game, and we will need to use cover a lot more when getting around, and that's what I really hope, is that we have to use that cover mechanic to get from one side of the map to the other, and it's not just a wasted mechanic. So it does do. I'm very impressed with the cover side of the mechanic. So how does it feel as a squad-based shooter? I sunk about 10 hours or more into the beta over the weekend, which is far more than I physically should have been able to do with my commitments. I played solo, as you can see from a lot of the videos on my YouTube channel. I also played in groups of 2, 3 and 4. The game is far, far more enjoyable when you play in a group. Even just a 2-man running around was a lot better than solo. But when you're in a group of 4 that actually use proper tactics, the game was just fantastic. The only issue I have, once again, is because it was a beta, we didn't get to go in depth into those different sides of the tactics for each individual players. It felt like we were just 4 single agents running around as a team, rather than a specialised squad running around the map that had different skills that really worked well with each other. Like, pretty much everyone healed, most people pinged, and you either had the right shield or you had the grenade, the sticky grenade. So that was as far as we get in the beta. So I understand because it's a beta, but we didn't really get to push those squad-based mechanics. But from what was there, it really did feel great, and it's definitely a game that I will be pushing to play as a part of a group rather than solo, which is different for the way I usually play games. But it's definitely one we'll be playing a lot in armed as a group. So that moves us on to the RPG part of the game. It definitely did feel like it wanted to be an RPG game. However, once again, because it was a beta, we didn't really get to see much of it, but you could see the seeds of it. So what you could see was the ability to specialize into the different branches and actually use them in conjunction with each other. So you could use the medic side of thing with the DPS side of the character as well. Just the look of the characters as well, even though you couldn't customize the face and body too much because of the beta, but you could actually customize the clothes a great deal, which is good. And the fact that it's a beta and there's probably heaps more out there as well, you did sort of feel different with the different weapons you could run and the different clothes you could wear. So that side of it was fairly good for the RPG side of it. But I really do want to see more of the in-depth side of it. We just didn't get to test it, unfortunately, because Ubisoft, I'm assuming, thinks it's good and it's balanced. So I'll have to just take their word for it at this stage, since we didn't get to test it in detail. I would have preferred to see them opening up a little bit more and see if we could test and find out if the balance was there for the different the depth of the RPG system that they're building. Overall, yes, it looks like it's going to be good, but it's all hopes and dreams at the moment until we get to get our hands on it a bit more. The only bit that I have that's a little bit worrying is the fact that the talents side of the progression system is linked to an RNG setup. The fact that your firearms, stamina and electronics are only increased by the perks on the armor that you wear, and that armor is tied to an RNG loot based mechanic. So, but I'm interested to see how that plays out. It does get around the idea that most MMOs have to deal with of skill respecking, so I guess that is an upside. But it'll be interesting to see whether you get to the end game when you just can't use that weapon that you want to use because you haven't got that piece of armor that gets your firearms over that threshold to use that perk. So, but I'll reserve judgment on that at the moment. So it's supposed to be a persistent and evolving and interesting world. The world looks great, it really does. The PvE areas look really dense. There's stuff littered everywhere. It's not like your different other open world games where you're running for miles and it all just looks the same. The different shops, the different areas, there's just seems to be different places everywhere you look. So, and this was only the first little area of the map. The issue again is the fact that it's a beta, and like I said before, I think we only had the world populated 25% of what it will be at launch. So what I hope we're missing out of this is, obviously they've got the jobs boards, which will hopefully be refreshing daily or sooner with different encounters, and the enemies pushing back into areas and taking more hostages, which are the encounters, so that covers that. But just different enemies just appearing in different parts of the map, just more of a living, breathing world, which is all which would make the game feel a lot better and a lot more interesting. The issue I had in the Dark Zone is another case of the beta, where it felt like the enemies just weren't there. It was really hard to find the NPCs and chests. We ran around for the last 2 nights and couldn't find a Dark Zone chest to unlock, even though we had keys. So I only have opened up one over the whole beta. But like I said, I really think this was the beta. You could see map design where there should have been bosses, and we ran into areas and you could see, okay, there's a restock ammo box and there's a dead end with a chest in it, but there's just no enemies, and there was no enemies the whole beta. So they were either mission items or they were just enemies just not there. The other good thing about the persistent and living world was the fact that I was in the Dark Zone and the normal Midtown area seemed to be instanced together. So what's happening in the Dark Zone is actually happening while you're in the same instance but outside the Dark Zone. We exited the Dark Zone, we're running along, we could hear a flare go off still. The extraction part of the map was then flashing, so it just seemed to be all still happening, which was, I didn't think that would be the case, but seemed to be happening and interacting with us even though we weren't in the instance, which is a really good part of the system. The serious issue I have, however, with the Dark Zone, now we're talking about it a bit more, was the lack of level scaling in the Dark Zone. I went in with Vast from Armed. He was level 8 normal and level 6 Dark Zone. I went in as a level 7, so one level less, probably even half a level was all it was. But my Dark Zone level was 10, so I was actually more experienced in the Dark Zone than he was. We went in as a squad. We walked through the door and we could not see each other. We then realised we would Dark Zone instanced out of each other. He was put in the level 8 area and I was in the level 1 to 7, and there was just no way we could play together. Ended up he had to start a whole new character, go through all the start bit, and then come join me just so we could play together in the Dark Zone, which just seemed a bit strange in this day and age. I just don't understand games putting hurdles in front of you playing with your mates, and whether it was me being pushed up to the level 8 area and just dealing with it, or somehow he gets scaled down to level 7 and he had to deal with it. I don't know, but it just doesn't seem like it's something that should be in the game. So overall, what did I think? Overall, the beta, the really small section that Ubisoft is letting us see at the moment, it does feel like a really small slice of it, but wow, I'm impressed. I'd really recommend, if you're interested in the game at all, dive in. I do hope there's an open beta before launch so people who are on the fence can just freely have a play of it and just see what it's like, because I really do think they will get hooked very quickly. The beta showed us seeds of just an amazing game, especially with all these different mechanics looking so good, even though we could only really fill in the blanks for the end game part of it, but it just seemed like it was there, and I'm very excited about the 8th of March. If you're on the fence, just watch as many videos as you can, but I would suggest jumping in. Either pre-order it now or wait till launch and get it, but if you're on the fence, you're going to like this game. I guess the real test for me was the hours I put into it. I've got a 5-month-old, and I know that 5-month-old's going to wake up at 6 AM. I've got a partner who I know is not going to let me off the hook because I was up playing games all night. I'm not be able to complain about being tired. So when my gaming time started at 10 PM on the server's launch, what time did I stop playing when I knew I had to be up at 6 AM and I wasn't going to get a break the next day? The Friday night was 1:30 AM, and that was only because I got in trouble. I seriously considered staying up all night, and Saturday was 2 AM was when I finally got off, and it was 11 and 11 the next 2 nights, and that's only because I knew I had to work the next day and I was going to be shattered otherwise. So I can only give you that as an example of how much I can recommend and how addictive this game is going to be. So thank you for listening and watching the video. I hope you enjoyed and hope it helped out. That's Freege out. Bye.